Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I am privileged to welcome not just a former colleague from ITC, but probably one of the senior most names from the corporate world, Sunil Alagh. Sunil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sunil. Sunil is currently the Managing Director of SKA Advisors Private Limited. He's the former Managing Director of Britannia Industries. He's involved with Save the Tiger campaign. He sits on several boards of several institutions. He's a regular on every television channel. And he's a face I'm sure all of you have seen all the time. So Sunil, as a starter, what would you say are three key milestones in your life or your career?
You know, the first one I would say is when I got admission into IIM in Calcutta. Because I think at the end of it was the first time that we sat for an exam which had multiple answers. Otherwise, we always wrote out,
Yes.
And we were the origin. And I said, what the hell is this? Yeah. I mean, we were going around giving, answers away.
Yeah.
But the important thing was, I think I came 11th in the waiting list for IIM Calcutta.
Okay.
And that particular year, for some reason, maybe 10 people never turned up. So I got my admission into IIM Cal.
Fabulous.
But I ended up being 6th in class after 2 years.
Amazing.
Now, to be 11th in the waiting list and becoming 6th in class after 2 years goes on to show that how much can you actually rely on just an interview,
Correct.
or just an exam. And that was my first milestone was that. And then, of course, I was perhaps the first student in IIM Calcutta who got a job at the end of the first year.
Okay.
Ajit Haksar, I went for my summer job at that time to ITC. And he said, okay, this is it. Now you come and join us. And I said no, because I said, look, I want to finish my second year and then have that MBA degree. He said, look, at the end of the degree, what would you want to, which kind of company will you join? So I said something like yours or Levers. And at that time, Shell and all those were the companies that were there. So he said, I'm giving you the job now. What do you want to do the second year for?
Okay.
So I said, no. I said, the only reason was that, look, I might join ITC now, but then that will only be my experience, as opposed to saying that my IIM Cal degree will stay with me for life.
Correct.
He appreciated it. And he gave me a job offer there and then. So I was the only student at the end of the first year, perhaps in the history of IIM, who had a job. And I went through the second year, just going through. So that perhaps was a milestone, and my exposure to Ajit Haksar himself was amazing. He was then the deputy chairman, and Bone was the chairman of ITC, if you remember. And he went on to becoming the chairman.
Correct.
But I would say the second milestone was when I joined Britannia. JB Singh left ITC and he was the head of marketing.
Correct.
And he went in as a marketing director of Britannia, and he yanked me out and he said, no, you are going to come and be with me. And all my experience was in the field, but he said, I'm not going to head office alone. You're coming as group product manager into Britannia. This was in N74, I think it was. And at that time, Britannia had just taken over from, I think, Paris in the south and Voltas. They were the managing agency system who distributed products. And suddenly, group product manager, I thought I'll have some product managers below me, but there was none.
Okay.
So, I mean, like you were called a GPM without any PM. So you had only your secretary and yourself. And all the biscuit brands had to be strategized, and all the advertising had to be done right from the beginning, because there was no such thing. So whether there was a Marie or a Glucose D or a Bourbon or all the products had to be, done. And so that in itself was a great exposure for me. And I would call that the second milestone. The third was, of course, the final one was in 2003, when Wadia asked me to leave Britannia. And I had spent 29 years a little over 29 years in Britannia.
Wow.
And Britannia itself was only 90 years. So 1/3 of Britannia's life and practically all my life was in Britannia.
Amazing.
And that perhaps shook me a bit when I left, and we'll get on to what are the lessons I learned.
Sure.
But the three milestones were, if you ask me, the entry into IIM, and then, doing everything for Britannia.
Correct.
And then, of course, the last one was when suddenly close to retirement, you had to go through a Wadia episode in your life.
So, let's talk now about SKA Advisors.
Yeah.
What is the kind of work you're doing at this advisory?
When I set up the company in 2004, because I think it was 2003 when I left Britannia, and I didn't know what to do at that age. I said, I'm not going to get another job. And Sunday I met a gentleman called Mr. Pandit, who was one of the senior partners of McKinsey, whom I've known to date. And I went and spent some time with him, and I said, what should I do? He said, with all your experience, you better set up a consulting, because a lot of companies will want people like you to come and consult for them. I didn't even know what to charge. And I said, look, I'm totally new to this. What should I charge? So he thought for some time, and he said, why don't you charge $5,000 a day? And at that time, it worked out to 2 lakhs per day.
Wow.
And I said, really? Who'll pay me that? I mean, nobody's going to pay me that. He said, you'll find it quite amazing. Just ask for $5,000 a day. Otherwise, you tell the guy, look, I'm not available, and price yourself at that level. So I did ask for that amount because based on what he told me. And not only did I get that, but the advisory companies that I got initially were things like Warburg Pincus got me in to advise them for 1 year.
Wow.
And they paid me well above that. They paid me almost a crore or something like that for the year, just for me to go out and look for companies and keep advising them on the FMCG business.
Wow.
So my advisory company, when it started, was just that. And then, of course, I said, now I've got to work out a system for SKA Advisors, which it's quite unique for me, because I said, look, if you go to my site, you will see that we've said that, look, it's very easy to use the word insight all over the place. For me, hindsight plus foresight is equal to insight. And insight was something which had to be unique to you. I mean, like if, for instance, I was against finding out that, look, today tea is had, if you are talking about tea as a product, and you said, no, this is had in the mornings, and if you had something in the afternoon or as a snack, I said, look, all the big companies are doing the same research, so they know all this. Don't call it an insight.
Correct.
Insight will have to be something that you own and nobody else does.
Absolutely.
And people started calling, having tea in the morning an insight, and it was a misuse of the word.
Okay.
So what we used to do for companies was that we used to try and take the present and bring the future into the present for them.
Okay.
In their strategy, which I still do. And once we've got the strategy with the top management, which might be the CEO or the board, then we get on to dealing with then we tell the board and everybody else to move out of the way. And then we become part of the team below, where we handhold them and we strategize in executing what the company wants. And that's our thing the biggest thing has been handholding, because I found that ultimately at the end of the day, whilst McKinsey and gang were always looked upon, but the junior officers said, hey, what do they know about being in the field? But when people like me went and spoke, they listened with a lot of respect, and I said, might as well use that advantage.
Very nice.
So we actually hold that, and we've continued with that. I've advised GlaxoSmithKline and Biocon and everybody else, and it's worked out quite well for me at the end. Of course, last year has been a bad year for all of us, but
I agree.
Because of COVID. So that's what we do.
So as someone, who has built so many brands, who's got such amazing knowledge of brands, before I come to your learnings, I want to ask you, what goes into building a successful FMCG brand?
See, when you build one brand from scratch, it's either like Britannia, we already had a brand.
Correct.
Okay. But it meant something to various consumers and you built on that. But, building a brand for me is building an experience. That becomes very important, because a lot of people that I've learned is that, look, they tend to mistake a brand as an individual or a name, but it must last for centuries. You've seen so many brands die.
Correct.
In about 10 years time or 20 years time, and new brands come up. The experience is to remain relevant. A brand must continue to remain relevant. Therefore, it has to continuously adapt. You cannot take a fixed position. This is my brand, and that's it, So for me, for instance, if people ask me, is Shah Rukh Khan a brand? I've said no. Shah Rukh Khan is not a brand. If you tell me Mahatma Gandhi is a brand, I say no. Non-violence is the brand.
Okay.
Mahatma Gandhi is a medium for that brand. So therefore, I'm drawing a slight distinction, maybe unique to me or whatever, but I don't treat individuals as brands because they might go and they might die, you know, but a brand has to outlive the individual.
Correct.
So don't ever say that a brand, of course, you can have a brand which just stays for some time and dies with you. But do you like remain relevant to your this thing? That's for me is a brand. If you keep continuing relevance, you keep continuing growing, you keep continuing evolving, that would be the brand.
Fantastic. And again, as you look back at your journey, I mean, you know, from, as you said, group product manager or group brand manager doing multiple brands together to a situation today where everything is digitized.
Yeah.
What is the digital world? And you're still actively, you know, advising so many different brands. How do brands cope with the change in because of the digital world?
You know, I am tech challenged, so I have not learned anything about how to do digitalization.
Okay.
But the important thing is you got to leave that to specialists. It's like me saying, I know accounting. No, I don't. Absolutely. I mean, it's leave it to the accountants, leave it to the finance guys to do it. Correct. But ultimately, you have to ask yourself that whatever they are developing, how do I connect that to the consumer?
Correct.
And that becomes very important. And that part, I have a lot of people, youngsters who come to me with various ideas today. And they say, look, why don't you advise us? Why don't you mentor us? And they're all digitalized. Huh? They're all IT and they are all AI, which I know nothing of. But the first question I ask them is, try and explain to me, a person who doesn't know anything, as to how are you going to be useful in what you're developing for me in my life?
Very well said.
And therefore, the same thing you got to apply for consumers. That look, especially in India, you have a lot of people in rural markets and everything else who don't necessarily understand the digital world.
Correct.
But use it now. That becomes a medium for you to reach people. Social media today reaches people. That's all. So use your social media in reaching people, which earlier went from, let's say, from the press to television to word of mouth. Now, you've got another area which is a medium to reach your consumers.
Very interesting.
That's the way I view the digital world. Huh?
Very, very interesting. So let's now move to the second segment of our conversation. You know, you as a board member, you know, you sit on the board of several companies.
Yeah.
And yet, being a non-executive director is now resulting in very serious fiduciary responsibilities.
Yeah.
What do you look for before you join a board?
See, what you look for is, especially because of the fiduciary responsibility, earlier you became a director and you had 20 boards, you know, because you were collecting money from everybody. So you became a professional independent director.
Correct.
What you have to switch today is to become a professional who becomes a director.
Right.
So, you know, there's a slight difference there.
With you.
So what you do is that, look, you don't get into day-to-day management of a company. That you have to leave to the chief executive and the team there is. Otherwise, you may as well be running the company yourself. Independent directors are supposed to add value to the team. Okay, so what I look for is how open are they to suggestions given by independent directors. The second point that I know I want to work out is that, look, are they really a company with an image where you ensure that you are not going to expose yourself because you don't know what is happening inside a company. You don't do anything more. So it's very important for me to ensure that, look, is it one-man run? There are a lot of family concerns and look, is he taking out money or not taking out money? That's something you got to look for. And the second thing is, how open is the team to independent directors' suggestions? And for instance, I'm on the United Breweries board where Heineken comes in, and then I find that whatever we say on the board is taken by the management and then they do something about it. So you have to be in that company where even if it's a family run company, that is the top man open to suggestions. That becomes the most important. Second, of course, you buy and then who else is the director on the board? That's very important for me.
Correct.
Like, are they people that you can get along with? Because suddenly you join a board and you know, you're the sore thumb in the system. Everybody hates you because you're asking too many questions.
Correct.
And then that's it. You know, so for me, before I join a board today, whereas you can be an advisory board anytime, that has no fiduciary responsibility. So today, most of the times I say, no, I don't want to join your board. I'll be on your advisory board, and which has no fiduciary responsibility. Would you want me?
Okay.
And then most of the people are looking for that also.
Very interesting. And again, over the years, you've sat on so many boards over so many years. How have you seen transparency change and evolve in boardrooms?
See, transparency has changed and evolved because of the thing like, I mean, even in United Breweries, it has changed substantially since I joined the board. And with Heineken coming in, professionals coming in, there's Kiran Mazumdar, Shaw on that board, there's Madhav Bhatt, there are a whole lot of us. So you have to start looking at the transparency, because if they are not transparent, you have to ask the right questions, because how do you protect yourself as an independent director is by asking the right questions. If you get a reply from the managing team which is wrong, then you are then covered yourself up completely, because I asked. But if you don't ask any questions, then there is no transparency at all. You must, with all your experience, say that, look, is this company going in the right direction? Do you have to have a strategy meeting with the team even once a year? And in every board meeting, you must insist that one member of the team, say the head of marketing says it on one, head of supplies, must expose himself to the board. And that becomes very important, because even though you're not involved in day-to-day management, you're able to assess, do they have a succession plan or not? Is the board able to add value that in case of a drop-dead situation, do you know the rest of the team, or you only know the CEO?
Very fascinating.
That becomes most important.
Very fascinating. So I'm now going to come to your Britannia journey. 29 years, and you did say that you will share with us some of your learnings. For someone who led Britannia, built it into such an amazing organization, what were some of your key learnings as you left the company?
The biggest learning was, and I wanted to share, was that, look, I trusted everybody. And people became the most important for me in any organization.
Correct.
More than what the company is doing, more than the vision, more than anything else. If the people are not doing the right job in the right place, then... So I tried to make everybody more employable, whether they stayed with me or not. It was not, that didn't really matter as much as, of course, you begged all the key members to stay with you. There was no question of that. But the rest, you said, look, if you want to leave me, you must leave me thinking that, my God, I really miss this company. I really miss the individuals there. And I was trusting everybody. And maybe that was an error on my part, because I was really let down by the people you trusted most.
Correct.
For instance, I got Nasli Wadia, Britannia, whether he liked it or not, whether he admits it today or not. I'm the one who went and told Antoine Riboud that he's a good guy, have him. And the big mistake that I made was, it was never going to happen to me. And I want to warn everybody, thinking that, you're seeing him do various things to various people around you, but you tend to say, he can't do it to me because, I'm the one who got it for him. And yet, that's a learning which is there. And therefore, always expect that the company is not, everything in the company is not going to go the way you think it is. That's very important in life. And that's perhaps the biggest, but that hasn't changed me. I still continue to trust people. I mean, just because one or two people let you down, that doesn't mean the rest of the people are bad.
Correct.
But, it's like the government saying all industrialists are bad. No, but one or two are bad. The others are doing a damn good job.
Absolutely.
So similarly, don't use the same brush. But I've learned now, that you continue to trust, but don't have absolute trust in people.
Very well said. Yeah. Great lesson. Great lesson. So, Sunil, I'm going to now move to some questions for you personally. My first question is that, after such an amazing career and you've given back so much to so many companies, as you look back, what has success meant to you?
I go by what Einstein said a long time ago, is that you never become a man of success, become a man of value.
Okay.
For me, success is if you have added value to your team, if you've added value to your company, even after failures or whatever, even from your failure, has the team learned, has the management learned? And therefore, for me, success is being of value to your family, to your company, to everybody.
Okay.
Otherwise, you've not achieved anything in life. It's not materialistic. It's just that, have you been of value as a human being to the rest of the team? That would be success for me.
Okay. And a follow-up question from that is, who or what inspires you?
It's very peculiar for me. I'm not a very religious person and I don't go to all the temples and all that. But if you read the Gita, I mean, that's a true inspiration, because it tells you in many ways there's no such thing as black and white.
Correct.
Life is full of grays. And therefore, the biggest inspiration for me has been my Gita, the teachings of Gita, and of course, my family, my wife and my 2 daughters. They are your biggest. They will support you regardless of what happens to you, and yet tell you where you're going wrong.
Okay. Okay. My next question to you is that if you, Sunil, were a role model to millions of children who closely followed you and your life choices, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
You know, the one thing that I would change in myself is perhaps my impetuousness, and I relied too much on gut feel more than on fact and research. I was more emotional than actually practical in my life. Okay. And that's one thing that one needs to change. And if I tell all the youngsters, don't get carried away with just being a gut feel man. See, because in my case, guts worked and I got successes.
Correct.
But when I look back and say I could have been totally wrong, you know, so you had gut on your side, but that's not something that I would rely on too much. And I wouldn't recommend that youngsters get into that particular area. And remember, one thing in life is that, you know, you can only fall if you stand up.
Correct.
Remember that you have to stand up. And I've fallen so many times, but every time that you fall, I've got up, because if you don't learn how to stand up, you're never going to fall. You'll always be lying on the ground all the time, you know.
Correct.
Which is a comfortable position. But I would tell everybody, learn to stand up. Perhaps you will not fall as often as I did, because I relied on gut, on people, on whatever. So that's something I would avoid.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. My next question to you, Sunil, is on failure. And I've often said this. I have a new book coming out on failure next month. I've often said parents in India or South Asia don't teach children it's okay to fail. And that manifests itself. So my question to you is, what are some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
You know, every mistake that you make, it actually, in a way, I didn't plan it like that, because as long as your intent is right, go ahead and make failures.
Okay.
But if your intent is wrong, that I'm doing it for my own personal, you know, maybe my own personal wealth, or for me to get some award, then you're going about, and if you fail there, then you are totally shattered. But if you have the right intent, keep that in mind, and that's something where you will fail. I failed in launch of products, but I've learned one thing is that you're only as good as your last film for a lot of actors. But I'm just saying that if you've had 2 successes, you can have 3 failures after that, and those 2 successes will carry you
through.
Try your best not to have the first big failure and no successes to back you. Then you're a bad guy. I mean, then you've had it. But I have learned that if you have, like, for instance, I got great success with Tiger biscuits. And that, of course, put me on the map of how to launch a biscuit. But then again, I relied a lot on gut feel. You will not believe it. There was no research done on Tiger biscuits.
Okay.
At all. Zero research was what was done, because I said, you know, there are certain things where you have to learn. My wife is a doctor. So you have to learn how to be a GP. If everything is going to be X-ray, blood test, karalo, ye karalo, then you don't need the doctor, because at the end of it, they'll read it out for you. A GP is one who's able to gauge just by seeing you and saying, okay, try this medicine. Of course, if something serious happens after that, then they know where to take you. So I would say that, look, you have to, my Tiger biscuits, if you want to learn about, you know, where did I get that success? I said, which mother doesn't want to call her child a tiger? Which young kid doesn't want to be a tiger? So why do we need to research a brand name where we are so sure of? Then I went in for a red pack, if you remember.
Correct.
And I said that red was a color, auspicious color in India. So we don't have to research that. All the other packs in the market are white for biscuits. Red will stick out. And a lot of my team fought me saying, so red will look like Lifebuoy soap and all in that. I said, no, it won't. And we went ahead and did Tiger. And then they said, you can't register Tiger. A lot of obstacles came in the way. So, but my biggest failure was when I launched a product called Chai Biscuit.
Okay.
I remember that very clearly. And I thought I was doing a great job, because people were talking about Chai Biscuit. So you had a Mari kind of biscuit, which was called Chai Biscuit. And I copied the 4 films for I think it was Honda which got 4 different directors all over the world to do it. So I got 4 different directors of this, 4 famous directors to shoot 4 films for this. And we launched, and all the distributors said it was a great product. They ate it, and we researched it, and yet the product bombed. What did I learn was that we went back and I said, how did this bomb? Let's find out. Because what was done in the research, I said, bring the packs which were researched. And nobody in the marketing team had kept any pack. Nobody in the technical team had kept any pack. So the first thing I learned from that failure was that, look, on a small scale, a biscuit might turn out to be X. And all salesmen who are not involved in it must taste the product before it goes into the market. And perhaps we may have avoided that failure. But we always kept 6 packs, which was researched, and R&D kept 6 packs of what was made. And then from then on, so every failure of mine was to learn something. And that was a very big failure, because we spent a lot of money on advertising, a lot of money and everything. But I had enough successes to carry me through that failure.
Fabulous. And my last question to you, Sunil, and this is for the thousands of young people who will listen to you and your words of wisdom. What would your advice be to a young individual who's starting off on their journey in the corporate world?
You know, where do I start? There's only one word I would say: have testicular fortitude. And I'm using the word testicular fortitude in a manner where if you're young, if you don't have it, you will never get it. And have disruptive optimism. You know, a lot of people say I'm optimistic, but your optimism must be disruptive. Don't just be an ordinary optimistic guy. And be prepared that when I fall, I have the capacity to get up and I will learn from all the failures. So for me, have testicular fortitude, have disruptive optimism, and then just go for it. Because half the time the world has got a large number of ideas, great ideas all over. What is lacking is the will to execute and the will to weather the storm should you be going wrong.
Wonderful. Sunil, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. It's so wonderful to reconnect with you. I wish you lots of success with everything that you are doing.
Thank you. Learn to be old like me, you know, keep doing. Always wake up in the morning and on a Monday and hate it if you say I have nothing to do. I want to die before a Monday arrives and I say I have nothing to do on this Monday and I don't know what I'm going to do. That's what I feel, you know.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you again.
Okay, great, wonderful.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.